Okay, now, I've been complaining about zoning for a long time, so I thought I'm going to go to the municipal ordinances and look up the zoning laws. So this is what I found. It's chapter 114 of zoning. Okay? And here, Doc, you want to grab a hold of that?
Yeah.
I started to read it, and I was going to study all the zoning.
Wait a minute, this is all the zoning?
And what this is just the table of contents.
The table of contents?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is not, behind each one of these lines here is a little dissertation in the code explaining what it's all about. So you're going to stop right here. B4, Central Business District, purpose, permitted uses and regulations, continued use. Those are each paragraphs within the zoning. And it continues on with, let's see, I'm up to now page, 15. But these are legal size papers. Continuing on. Here it is. There it is.
This is just a table of contents.
This is the table of contents to our zoning. This, folks, is the barrier, one of the barriers of business. You know,
yeah, here's something for you to jump over.
You wonder if you have trouble getting to...
Raise the bar, George. Raise the bar. We got too many people trying to come in and make a business.
There it is. But that's what you got. That's why they needed to hire somebody for $70,000 a year, whatever it was, to help businessmen get through and get their licenses and get started in business.
Really? We're paying somebody to help them get through this?
We pay tens of thousands of dollars to get this written up, and now we got to pay somebody to get through it. But that's what we got. That's what businesses have to face when they come to the city of Racine.
Good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. This is Mr. George Myers, our statistician and information vault.
Good morning, folks.
Mr. Jim Spodek, our producer, and I'm Dr. Ken Jorgen, your host. And we're going to start out tonight with a little announcement by Mayor Corey Mason. He pledged that he wants Racine to try and reduce its carbon footprint, which is, it's a noble goal, complying with the Paris Climate Agreement. I mean, that's a good idea, but really the carbon footprint doesn't amount to much more than carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, and it has some role in global warming is what the reason for doing that is. But at the same time, he's hyping up Foxconn. Boy, he's on board with that. That's going to create jobs. That's going to do great things. It's going to build up the area. Well, it's kind of like I was saying before, it's like you walk into a tavern and you see a buddy and you say, hey, he's got a beer in front of me. I thought you quit drinking. Well, I did. I haven't had nothing but beer for a month now. So, it depends on what you want to pay attention to. So, yeah, it's nice if you eliminate carbon dioxide, but, gee, if there's other things that are going to be happening, particularly with this Foxconn, and it happens with their other plants, and it happens with plants like this, or if this plant does not produce any of these things that we're concerned about, it'll be the first time. And some of them are like volatile organic compounds, VOCs. You see that every once in a while. You see that on a can of paint. Nitrogen oxides, things like that. And when these things get into the environment, and there's a way that it interacts with other things in the air, heat and light. Well, we have that once in a while when the sun comes out.
Yeah.
It produces ozone, low-level ozone.
It's political mumbo jumbo. That's really all it is.
Well, that's.
At one end, you're gonna, Foxconn's the greatest thing, and we're gonna move forward. At the other end, we got to stop the pollution in this community. It creates a headline.
Well, it's a way of getting credit on two ends. Right. You get credit for creating jobs, and you get credit for fighting pollution, and it's not necessarily true.
No, and
my problem with the Paris Accord requirements, whatever they are.
Well, wait a minute. What do you mean, whatever they are? Now you're going to have a problem with something you don't know it is?
No, I'm just saying. I'm not sure specifically what they are. I know it's to control pollution in the environment.
Right.
But there were an awful lot of countries, particularly some of the bigger ones, China and some of them, that were just ignoring it, and they were allowed to ignore it. But the United States, which had lots of wealth, was expected to follow it. because we could afford the loss.
Right.
Now, Racine, unfortunately, well, right now we're one of the 20 most vulnerable or lowest producing, lowest growing communities in the whole state. And we've got our own problems here with industrial. Now, if you're going to start bringing, with regards to the zoning requirements, with regards to the tax barrier that we talked about last program, now you're going to add another barrier to it, and you're going to be required to come in and say, okay, now we want to find out just how much CO2 are you producing, whether it's a restaurant or car repair, and we're going to just see what is it, and I don't even know what those specifics are. All I know is the Paris Accord. There were a lot of poor companies.
Well, the Paris Accord, I think, is primarily focused on global warming.
Okay, well, that's carbon dioxide.
But look at Foxconn. He just talked about creating ozone.
Right.
You know, I mean, so out of one side of your mouth, you're talking about, you know, Foxconn and all the benefits it's going to be, and on the other side of the mouth, you're talking about we got to stop creating ozone and.
Well, no, they're willing to allow a certain amount of increase in the volatile organic compounds and heavy metals, etc. Here it says, by one measure, emissions in Racine County are already in violation of the new federal ozone
that's what I'm
standard.
talking about. Again, political mumbo jumbo. It's a way to get a headline. There's nothing going to happen because of it. The aldermen all jump on it like they're actually going to accomplish something. They're going to accomplish nothing. The only thing you're going to accomplish is possibly, if it ever comes to it, where they find someone they don't particularly like coming into Racine that's not going to join the club. They're going to pull this stuff out.
Yeah, that's when you pull it out and say, all right, now, let's see, what is your carbon dioxide emission going to be? And that's in any business. I mean, particularly, I would say in the restaurant business, probably when you're cooking and you're burning all that, those open burners and stuff. I mean,
it's supposed to burn your food, George. You know.
Yeah, how much carbon dioxide are you producing? So it's like, I don't know. All I'm saying is that it looks to me like it sounds good, but it could be another blow to the growth that we already are suffering.
Right. I mean, do we really understand it completely in the city of Racine? Do they believe when these aldermen voted for this? Why don't you know, they bring up experts in to talk about something that they want to push through. All of a sudden there's a study and there's experts. Now this comes through lickety-split. They have no idea even how it's going to impact the community.
That would have been a good idea to bring somebody in that, like me. I would probably like to hear that. What is the Paris Accord? What activity do you engage in that makes you in violation of the Paris Accord?
Right. Well, it's primary fossil fuel consumption.
Okay, well, but that's fine to say that. But how do you?
Exactly.
When does that happen? And
when you burn it.
Okay, so is that so? Anytime you have a stove or something going, I'm talking about the specific activity. You turn on an oven, you're burning fossil fuel, right? Isn't natural gas considered fossil fuel? And fossil fuel, by the way, is a lie too. They finally found out that there weren't enough bones,
exactly.
Dinosaurs.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the
Earth is actually producing oil. Somebody finally figured it out. It's
a lot of dinosaurs died, George.
Well, it's mostly decay of carbon-based plant life more than anything else.
Anyway.
So all right. So that's what you're doing, Jimmy. You're saying it's
I'm just saying you got one subject here, you got one over here, and all it's
Well, we're already in violation, and records show Foxconn will emit hundreds of tons of carbon monoxide, particulates, sulfur dioxide, various hazardous air pollutants, as well as the VOCs and nitrous oxide each year. Hundreds of tons.
Of carbon monoxide?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I got a clip.
I might be a little more concerned about that. I'm not sure how that affects global warming because carbon monoxide doesn't last very long.
Well, I got a clip I'd like to play because it's actually, I picked it up. It's an editorial from WYSN Channel 12, and it's a nice clip, and it kind of spells it out how it's interesting how Foxconn got a pass on all the environmental stuff, yet Waukesha, who has been applying for water for 5 years, and they get in, I don't know, 45 days or 50 days, they get the okay. Something's wrong again. You know, when something goes this fast, you got to ask the questions. Is this going to be this? To me, like we had said earlier on.
Play that clip.
I'm going to play it.
Have we got permission to play that, by the way?
Yeah, we always do.
Editorial with President and General Manager Jan Wade.
When Foxconn announced its $10 billion plant was coming to Wisconsin, it was a big win. 13,000 jobs paying an average salary of $53,000. Those jobs coming when the plant opens. Foxconn also pledged Wisconsin first with the jobs for construction. In return, our state offered a large tax incentive package, up to $2.8 billion in refundable tax credits and $150 million in sales tax exemptions. State officials are now moving at lightning-fast speed to get it done, while others are raising serious concerns. Wisconsin DNR, for example, took just 3 months to approve Mount Pleasant and Foxconn for Lake Michigan water, yet took 5 years to approve Waukesha's request for water from the same lake. Foxconn's also been exempted from important environmental regulations other Wisconsin companies are required to follow. And the village of Mount Pleasant, home to Foxconn, is trying to buy up remaining land to build the plant, but holdout residents are crying foul, accusing the city of undervaluing their property and threatening eminent domain to seize it. Yes, Foxconn is arguably a big win, so on Wisconsin. But they should be held to the same standards and follow the same rules we all do. I'm Jan Wade.
I'm glad you got permission to show that, Jim,
Yeah.
because, I don't want to be in violation of anything in my life.
No.
None of those 15 feet of...
It's so pure and pristine, the dock, it's incredible. It's just a marvel to sit next to him.
yeah, Jim, imagine what it's like to be me. Quite an experience.
Pure.
All right, what about sales tax? Let's talk about that.
Oh, yes, the sales tax that was proposed by Jim Palahniuk, city...
Well, I don't know if it was proposed, but one of the things.
Well, he's the first one that I've seen mention
No,
it.
actually, it was brought up by the county. It was brought up by
Wasn't it
MT
some kind of
Boyle?
municipal meeting that he went to?
Well, that was what he did. But even before that, the Racine County, when they were discussing Foxconn, Racine County is carefully. This is probably a month before this. But what I'm saying is, the trial balloons are being floated. This is what's happening. This is how they do it. They come out here and they float a balloon out there, and if anybody, the people go nuts.
They listen. Yeah, they see other
Is anybody
explosions. Are you
anybody-
people spitting back or not?
Well, you're being irresponsible because those are pretty balloons.
Yeah,
And
they're all pretty.
You're frightening people with these pretty balloons.
Here, let's read it. Racine County is carefully evaluating numerous funding options to support the once-in-a-generation investment being considered by Foxconn and the unprecedented benefits that investment will bring to Racine County residents, said M.T. Boyle, Racine County Chief of Staff.
Let me see that. What did it say? Numerous funding options. What are some of the other ones?
Wait a sec. I want to just go one step further. At the
Right.
preliminary stage of exploration, it would be premature to comment on specifics. Apparently, somebody has to question.
Yeah, you don't need
what
to
are you
know
talking
about
about?
this.
Just like you did. What are these? However,
It'll
it
be
is
all right.
important to note that we consider all our options. We will continue to maintain our commitment to fiscal conservatism and to ensure the best deal for the county taxpayers. I mean,
Yeah.
if that isn't a bunch
We
of...
are doing the best for you. We're just increasing your taxes a little bit.
And we gave them $4 billion,
Yeah.
$4.5 billion. We're conservative.
I'm
Oh,
glad they're
my
being fiscally conservative because if they were wasteful, I couldn't afford it. I can barely afford the conservative approach.
Now, this was about a month ago. Now, Palahniuk came in and is floating the same balloon out there
Yeah.
at a meeting apparently in Milwaukee. And he says, if we're going to capture the benefits of any new spending that is likely going to come to our community, particularly during the Foxconn construction, while it's going on, the very best way to do that is a sales tax with the least burden on the existing population. In that regard, I think the timing could be very good. Jim Palahniuk, City of Racine Administrator.
The least burden, that's his way of
All
saying
yours.
could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse. This is the best it's going to be.
Well, he wants to capture that wild and
Oh, I like
woolly
that. It's just
money
floating
just,
around
yeah,
out there in the
blowing
county.
around all over the
everywhere.
place.
Yeah.
Let's corral it in here and let's do something useful with it.
Get the big
Let's tax
lasso
it.
out.
Let's bring it home
I
to
need
the
a pay
government.
raise.
Yeah. So that the tax is apparently 0.5%, similar to what the
That's a stadium tax.
Stadium tax.
Yeah.
And how you know how well that went?
Yeah.
It's still going.
I know
It,
it's still
it
going.
had to be a success because they never.
Who was
stopped
the
it. that how it
who was
works?
the senator at that time that in the middle of the night?
That was George Petak.
That's right, right, George.
He
And
got
he ended up
recalled.
with a good government job, by the way.
Yeah, recall.
Yeah, he did get recalled.
Where did he end up? I know he's
Weeda.
Okay.
I think it was Weeda.
Yeah.
But again, we're talking about capturing all this
And loose
money,
change.
this
yeah,
money
it's,
that's floating
it's like
around
loose
Foxconn.
change in the sofa. Yeah.
Well, at least he's going. At least he's going with a sales tax, which is pretty obvious. That's the nice thing about sales taxes is it's in the open. Everybody sees it.
Right.
Some of these other taxes, if they increase the property tax, for instance, or the income tax on a company, that company just increases its price of its product. It has to stay in business, and it passes it on to the consumer, and the consumer never sees that income tax. That tax. He just blames it on the producer, but really it was the taxes that caused the price increase. At least with the sales tax, it's right out there. We can all see it, and we know what's happening to it. And I don't know. I'm going to object to it. Our tax is already too high. We're already twice the rate.
How is that going to
property tax
benefit? I mean, I don't know if this money that's running around out there in the farm fields, and we're going to capture it. How are we going to? How does that benefit somebody living on Isabel Avenue?
It does not benefit the public sector at all. It doesn't benefit business. It doesn't benefit anything. All it does is benefit. Well, it benefits government.
No, come
People
on,
in
you
government
guys.
that get the money.
Right.
It's the least burden. The least burden. In other words, you're going to get a load thrown on you, and this is the easiest way. That's the benefit.
That's about it. Yeah. I will admit that.
It's the lightest
a
load.
property tax, a sales tax, a property tax, not a property tax, but a sales tax is the one tax in the Constitution that in your import and export duties that's provided for in the Constitution. The income tax came a century later, and it had to pass a constitutional act to get it instituted, and that was never dreamed of that we would have an income tax. That was a Karl Marxian thing back in the 1848. But at any rate, yes, it is the least damaging. But one of the reasons is because it's the most obvious, and everybody can see it, and it keeps it under control.
Yeah.
So,
but that also brings
I would prefer that it replace some other tax.
that would be
Excellent,
marvelous.
yeah.
well, it should be. What if it was just all of Racine County had just a sales tax? Take away all. Well, actually, it'd have to be the state of Wisconsin, but you could maybe regulate within municipalities. The thing is, if you've got Foxconn and they're bringing back this, I don't know, what was it, $20 million a year, supposedly kicked back to Racine County. I mean, that's a lot of money. Yeah. So we've already, actually, it's not their money, it's our money.
It's a repayment, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a repayment. I don't see where any of this is going to benefit any of the taxpayers in the whole, all of Racine County.
The problem with
this little sales tax?
Nothing.
No, it's not going to benefit the taxpayer. That is only, they've got this limitation on how much they can raise the property tax.
Right.
And that's creating hell with a lot of municipalities that aren't growing.
Right.
Because the only way you can increase it is if you have increased growth in your economy. And cities like Racine, which has all these barriers we've talked about, three major barriers, the property tax, the zoning, and the we're talking about a third one of the Paris Accord thing. So at any rate, you're going to have all these barriers to business, and you can't grow, so you can't increase your taxes, and government always likes to grow.
Right.
It's a part, it
They
always grows. Even with a loss of population of 20% of our population, government still feels it needs to grow.
Okay,
they want to spend more money, and basically this is about the only option left to them.
Well,
that's what it boils down to.
That's right.
But here, what you brought up, George, is interesting because what happens is this tax is right out there. It's going to say to all the taxpayers, we want to take a 0.5% out of everything you purchase.
In the city of Racine.
And now that's like right there in your face. When you talk about income tax, they increase the income tax a little bit. Well, you don't see it because your paycheck and the money just leaves. But when people understand how much they're actually being taxed, that then engages them in their community.
Exactly.
And that's where I think if we got back to a sales tax, we talked about it earlier. But here's my thought: is Jim Palanek the sacrificial lamb to this? He came in for the arena. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now
you think so? You think somebody's
You don't
feeding him,
think
Jim? You
Corey
got
Mason's
something. You think
knows
Corey Mason's behind him? Doing that?
Oh my God! The county talks about it. Then all of a sudden, Jim Palahniuk from the city. What? They don't talk about this? Corey Mason never talked about a sales
I
tax.
think he's probably in. I think
They're all
I think
involved with
Palahniuk is in favor of it.
he probably is in favor.
I don't
but
think he's the
Why isn't Corey Mason
designated,
bringing it out there? This is the Corey Mason tax. Because it doesn't matter. Jim Palahniuk, they can put him out as a sacrificial lamb, like PTAC, but it's really the Corey Mason tax, or the Rusty Clark tax, or who's the head of DeGroot of Mount Pleasant tax.
Mm-hmm.
That's who it becomes. So remember, you're going to own it when this comes.
But your life will get better.
It's because we're going to be capturing all those dollars running out of those court cases.
Right.
All that
I mean,
stuff
this is
going-
the most
and that
ridiculous-
free market. It just you just go, everybody enjoying it.
But if you notice how
You
they
get run over
under
by a
control.
roll of quarters if he doesn't capture them.
listen, you see how they this had to be orchestrated, that paragraph, perfectly set up because
know.
they don't ask like, hey, we're going to take tax from you, George. You're going to have to pay extra sales tax. No, it's capturing the existing.
The additional activity from Foxconn.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
It's
there you go.
this
We're
is-
gonna be that way.
I mean, it's the height of bullshit.
It is bullshit. And very, very elegant bullshit. You know?
Yeah, very well done though. Thank you. We enjoyed it. But we do have now. We talked about, George. You talked about the. We unscrolled a contents. Was that what it was?
That was a table of contents
Yeah.
of Chapter 114 of the Municipal Code, which is the zoning ordinances. And it's titled the zoning ordinances. It's got everything that's associated with zoning, with
Well, it's at
conditional use
least,
permits.
at least
and-
10 feet of pages like this. That was at least 10 feet.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Now this is just a table of contents.
Just a table of contents. And
Yeah.
in each one of those lines, if you could if you looked at those, we unrolled it. Each one of those lines, there's a paragraph or two behind that explaining what that part of the table of contents is all about. So it's a huge reading process, and that's why it's a very difficult to understand it all, and it gets very into incredible minutiae. I read parts of it, and like one part, 6 zoning B3 is different from B4 in that you can't park a trailer there, and B4 is different from B5, and the B5 allows 5-foot fences, and B4 only allows 4-foot fences. I'm just making this stuff up.
Right.
But you understand? And B,
Well, that's how they do it.
B2, you have to back your vehicle in, and B1, you can drive it in frontward. So, I mean, it gets into little things like that. So, and I guess Racine is broken down into these 12 or 13 or 14 zones. Mm-hmm. I mean, we think of 3 zones. We think of residential, we think of commercial, your sales, and we think of office industrial. Those, you have an industrial park over here, people live here, they shop here. But no, each one of those is broken down into 5 or 6 different things. So you have these immense number of zoning, and there must be a map someplace that this block is B3, and this block is C2, and this block
There
is...
probably is, but if we don't have one, I think we should hire a consultant to make one.
Yeah.
You know?
So-
what is that worth? About $100,000?
Yeah, well, that's what they were talking about.
Who's in favor of that? Who's in favor of $100,000?
They were going to...
Funds are available. We can go to the Intergovernmental Fund. We have $100,000
Funds are available in the
available.
account.
Well, they were going to hire a business consultant to help businessmen get their business started, to wend their way through this maze of ordinances. And it's a shame that we're setting things up that way. And it's one of the reasons why we are in such a low position on this advance of this growth totem pole.
Well, I've
the Wisconsin
maintained for a-
Taxpayers Alliance says we are in the 20 worst cities. Municipalities in the state for growth. And what it said, interestingly, the cities, and the reason Racine was pointed out in this study is because most of the small towns had the biggest problem with growth. The bigger ones grow better. But then it said, but Racine and West Allis both are in the considerably larger ones, and they're still in the bottom 20 of growth communities. So we've got a serious problem here, folks, and it's not going to be done, it's not going to be improved with more ordinances and more taxes and more regulations.
What's the solution?
It's not going to do it.
What's the solution?
The thing I've complained about for a long time is you virtually cannot get up in the morning and spend your day in and around the city without violating some ordinance. Or I mean, seriously, if somebody were to follow you around all day long, it's all but impossible to completely avoid violating every kind of condition that you're required to comply
I've been
with.
talking about since I was a kid about if a cop wanted to follow you. In fact,
Oh,
cops
yeah,
have said if he
yeah.
follows you around, well, within 3 blocks, you violated something. You
Yeah.
turned from the wrong lane, or you didn't put your signal
Well,
on.
that takes you to
Stepped
another
on a
step.
sidewalk
You know what
crack.
the number one business in Racine is? Incarceration. You know, you think about your system. You've got the highest incarceration rate. Well, that's money. You know, you got a huge system.
You got statistics on that? I mean, does that actually generate more money than like Case or S.C. Johnson?
Well, I'll tell you what, it puts a lot of
No.
people to work. Well, I don't know about that, but I think that's something we should start looking into.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the business in Racine? You know what the business in Racine is? Government. That's what
Yeah,
we have
pretty
here.
much,
getting to.
pretty
Yeah,
much, yes.
we pretty much have government. We've had, and then we've got this club that perpetuates itself to continue to keep themselves in this and isolate themselves from the public by insulating with more employees or more staff people or more studies. I mean, you can just watch it. I've watched it over the last 20 years just grow. Instead of coming in and solving a problem, they create a bigger, we have a group for that, or we've got a study for that, or nothing gets done. Take a look around. What has really been accomplished? $20 million in the IG fund, $20 million gone, not junk buildings, that's what we've got.
I know how to bring that under control. Just make it voluntary. Don't pay them. Public service.
Tell you what,
You know?
there's a certain amount of civil disobedience which creates I'm not talking about riots. I'm talking about non-payment of taxes, non-payment of certain things. That will definitely, when you start taking the basics away from your people that are controlling it, you start to all of a sudden now. Oh, how are we going to correct this? Now all of a sudden they're going to.
You just reminded me. I owe about $20 for personal property tax on my house. Yeah.
But I mean, it's.
Set it aside, and now I got a notice from the attorney's
I mean,
office.
listen. Here's the thing. I mean, you know, we've been out and talking to people, and we've heard this from Foxconn. People are catching on to Foxconn. They're
Yeah.
understanding the amount of money we brought in. You guys actually did a whiteboard on it. $785 million from Mount Pleasant, Racine County, and they're catching on to the fact that Foxconn is really a big con that was dumped in to get votes for pretty much the Republicans in this place. The Democrats jumped on board because they thought, man, there might be enough there for me to throw some extras to me. You know?
Don't want the Republicans getting all the votes.
Yeah. So I mean, but now all of a sudden, you hear from the community, and you know we hear it all the time. They understand that the amount of money that's being spent, what is the return for those dollars, and how we're looking at where $53,000 a year job now is being whittled down to maybe $30,000 and possibly less. There's a lot that's going to be shaking out, I guess.
Well, I think it was a $53,000 average.
Average,
So,
so-
you know, if you got a job that's worth $80,000, that means somebody is
Or a
on,
CEO that's
on
getting
the
$5
lower
million.
below
Well, and some of these
$50,000.
projects, when you sit back and look at how much the taxpayers are putting in, you find out, my goodness, they're putting in $40,000 per job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And in some of them, the amount the taxpayers put in per job was actually more than what the per job was paying. So I mean, not greatly more, but the point it was more. So even the Foxconn jobs, I don't know what it comes out to, but it's probably somewhere in $20,000-$30,000. When you take the billions of dollars being put into it, and the 10,000 jobs or whatever, however many jobs they actually come up with, divide that into it, you all of a sudden find out, my goodness, we're spending $30,000-$40,000 for each one of these jobs.
You know what I found interesting talking to people in Kenosha? They're saying, you know what? Thank God it didn't come here. And that's really the attitude there.
Well, and there's this whole thing with the taking of property, you know,
Yep.
the eminent domain. That is really, that's becoming more and more of an issue.
They're doing it illegally.
Well,
they are.
well,
I think that what they're trying to do is set precedent for it, you know, to be able to enable them to do that ongoingly.
Was that precedent set at Machinery Row? Because those guys, they just shuffled that whole group out down there, and then they came back.
Well,
But was
I don't
that-
think they used eminent domain down there. I think they coerced everybody into thinking they were going to get
Well,
more
they should
money
have
than
used
they
eminent
did.
domain because it was purchased by a municipality. The city of Racine
Yeah.
came in and bought Machinery Row. That's
Mm-hmm.
really who bought it. You know,
Well,
they want to call it. they had a
that's when
straw
you're
man.
talking about when they displace
Yeah.
the companies. All those companies, because of the ultimate end of what it was going to be for, it was going to be for Rodney Blackwell's project there. All those companies were moved out. All 16 of them needed to get this displacement cost, a new place to set up.
Right.
Even the guy with the gardens, with the water, what do they call it? aquaponics garden. Even he should have been set up with a new aquaponics place to set up his business, and they just moved out. They didn't know any better. But
was
such a scam.
was that this? Because I know some of the same players are in Foxconn that were in the machinery road development.
Yeah, well,
I mean, was that the one? How far can we go with this? And so that was their test. Because Foxconn just didn't pop out of the sky one day, Trump drive. Oh, that's a great spot to stick a huge Taiwan company. That's not
believe that story.
I don't believe that. Matter of fact, I don't believe much of anything that comes out of this stuff.
Well.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, what else we got? I think that pretty much kind of wraps it up for today.
Yeah,
huh?
we can. Yeah.
Have we reached a sufficient level of disgust here this morning?
Yeah. Well, you just look out for that income tax. It'd be nice not to get that. We just don't need
Sales tax.
Sales tax. I'm sorry. We don't need another 0.5%. We don't need an income tax either. But at least they're not proposing.
No,
that.
I think they're just floating. They're floating balloons right now.
I think that's very good. Yeah, because they did that. What was it? 10 years ago or something? They were talking about a little county tax or something like that, a county sales tax, and they just floated it around. And everybody was screamed enough, so they backed off and said, "Okay, we're not going to do it."
Yeah.
And I think that's
Well,
probably a good description, Jim. That's probably what
Yeah, but that was before all of this free money was like wandering around.
Well, this is the
captured.
latest excuse. I think at the other before it was KRM was coming through. We were doing the metro. It was tied in with something.
We just got to get that sales tax going, man.
Yeah,
we're losing out. These taxpayers are not paying enough. Not only do we take their land, we stake all their tax money and then give it to a foreign company. We need more. I mean, it's almost unbelievable.
Okay, well, we're done here. Now get back to work.
Yeah. Have a good day.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.